few weeks back, I made a tuning video for all of the Nissan GTR cars in Gran Turismo 7. And while the GTR models are definitely the premier vehicles in Nissan's lineup, there are also plenty of non-Nissan GTR models that I want to cover in this video today. From Silvias to Zs to everything in between, the non-GTR Nissans are definitely a bit of a mixed bag. I definitely feel like I got the most out of these vehicles with the setup, so if you guys do enjoy this video and or find usefulness from these setups, leaving a like, comment, and also subscribing will go a long way in helping the channel grow and for me to continue to come out with new videos. I will also be doing a manufacturer rating at the end of the video. This manufacturer rating will be taking into consideration the cars in this video today, as well as the cars that were in that aforementioned GTR video. If you want to see that GTR video in particular, it will be the first link in the description. But without further ado, guys, let's get into the cars. So the first car up is actually the fastest car in this entire video, and we're going to start off with a bang, the Nissan R92CP, which is in the running for one of the most useful cars in Gran Turismo 7. Not only is its raw maxed out pace unbelievably good, but its detunability for the lower PP races makes much of the single player a cakewalk, if that's what you're looking for. Also regarded as one of the best credit farmers in the Sardegna 800 race. When set up at full bore, the rear ride height can be raised to generate extra rotation. Usually this would come with a massive straight line speed penalty on most high downforce cars, but not on the R92. If there's one downside to note, it's probably its acceleration lower in the revs. With the gearbox provided in the setup screenshots, this will improve this condition slightly, but overall the acceleration is lacking compared to the 962 or the Sauber Mercedes. If I'm being honest, that's a small price to pay for the best high-speed cornering Group C Le Mans car in the entire game, not to mention a pretty inexpensive Group C car compared to some of the others. The best racing category of all time produced one of the best racing cars of all time, go figure. Next in line is a car I have a very conflicted relationship with. The Silvia Touring Car GR4 version is a very deceiving vehicle. Whether it's stock or tuned optimally for lap time, I can't stand driving it. The more power you add to it, the more miserable it gets, and it's the only GR4 car to get two engine swaps, the R35 Nismo motor as well as the V8 GTR GT500 engine. I personally enjoy it more with the V8, undoubtedly it's fastest with the Nismo motor, even if you can't brake, turn, or put down the power effectively. But even if I don't like the car, I have to be unbiased, and when it comes to other GR4 cars with the stock engine equipped, it might actually be the fastest GR4 car in the entire game, if not very close to it. Yes, the car I just spent the last minute bitching about is actually the fastest unswapped GR4 car, at least that I've tested so far. This is a perfect example of something I've been preaching for years. The best driving car is not always going to be the fastest one. This is a lesson people will need to learn pertaining not only to their car choice, but also to their thought process when making a setup. I could definitely make this setup more enjoyable to drive, but if I did, I would undoubtedly be slower and have less lap time potential. Also, if you are using the stock engine, the medium RPM turbo is better than the high RPM on almost every track aside from ovals. The most capable yet miserable car I've driven in GT7, but I definitely think you should go pick one up. On the opposite side of the spectrum, we have a car that feels amazing to drive but maybe isn't the fastest, and that's the new Nissan Z Performance. While not a bad option, the Z feels very average in many areas. The straight line speed is decent, the high speed cornering is strong but not groundbreaking, the medium to low speed entry behavior is very neutral, but the low speed traction is really bad, especially for a modern car, and that's the main thing that lets this car down on tracks with low speed corners. With the available R35 Nismo engine swap, the car is better than it normally is with the stock engine, but at 800 pp in particular, I don't see it as a standout by any means. In the lower pp ranges, this car will see more success, but besides the 9-speed transmission, there's really nothing all that notable about this car performance-wise, though I do find myself driving it more than this review might suggest. Next up, we have the Nissan Fairlady 350Z. The truth is, I want to love this car. The 350Z has always been my favorite model of Z and one of my favorite JDM cars in general. While this car is serviceable on most tracks, it lacks the cornering and low-speed traction to compete with many of the other cars from its era. The available R34 engine swap undoubtedly helps its case with a max output of 964 horsepower, but it's not enough to catapult the Z to the top of the 800 pp ladder. I've tried to remove some rear downforce to mitigate the understeer, and while that works to a certain degree, it still feels unwilling to rotate in high-speed corners. corners. And the lower rear downforce negatively affects medium to low speed traction as well, which is not something this car has an abundance of to begin with. All that being said, it's pretty easy to pick up and use without many problems, but also the textbook definition of average. Next, we have the best handling Z in the entire game. The 370Z ditches the chronic understeer of the 350 and has a perfectly neutral and effortless rotation into the corner. And while the 370 also gets an engine swap, the 840 horsepower GTR GT500 V8 is actually lacking in comparison to many of the other Z swaps. Now, I'm not going to be delusional and say that the car is underpowered, but compared to the other higher tier 800pp cars, it feels a little bit lacking in a straight line. That is the one caveat, but keep your momentum up, and this car is a strong contender on the right tracks and will also be great for fuel races in single player given the car has a race car engine swap. Overall, this is likely tied for first as my favorite Z in terms of driving enjoyment. And the car that it's tied with is the Amuse Nismo Z Super Leggera, commonly renowned as the Super Gator in my racing circle. The Amuse Z is definitely the better Amuse vehicle, as the Amuse S2000 has a whole host of issues that we'll talk about in a future video. Maxed out with the Rampage engine swap, this Z is organically under 800 BP, and for that specification, it's an excellent choice that is comfortably the best Nissan Z car in the entire game. It definitely leans heavily into the understeer category, but realistically, the cornering speeds aren't actually that slow despite what the entry balance feels like. The low speed traction, while still slightly tricky, feels very predictable and not snappy at all compared to other rear-wheel drive Nissan. And while the other Nissan Zs are good, they all have some kind of caveat that makes them not as good as they otherwise could be. But not this one. I love this car. In particular, with its engine swap, it becomes a monster. Next up, we have the Nissan Silvia Q S13, the originator of the broken PP glitch, which takes advantage of an exploit with the engine swap and the racing transmission. The Silvia Q in 2025 has many of the same characteristics it's had since launch. Lots of wheel spin, and in spite of all the new cars and engine swaps added to GT7, it's still the fastest road car below 700 PP. While the S13 needs a higher ride height than most road cars, it doesn't need to be monster trucked all the way up like I originally suspected. The higher ride height in the front helps the car put down the power in low speed corners. For whatever reason, the power delivery of the LS7 BRZ motor is far more smooth with the 60 initial torque, one of the few cars where the upsides of running initial torque outweighs the downsides. This setup will also work wonders on the swapped Silvia K S13 despite not being featured in this video. Regardless of my feeling on the merits of using a PP exploited car, the Silvia Q is undoubtedly one of the most useful cars in the entire game for clearing the single player events and dominating at 700 PP. Even if it's not your cup of tea, it's a great car to have in your back pocket. Over 3 years into GT7 and we still have 1230 horsepower cars on racing softs at 700 PP. Good job, PD. But the best driving Silvia in my opinion is the K2A Civic swapped Sileighty. Not only is the corner entry rotation and mid-corner balance perfect on the Sileighty, but the low speed traction feels much more manageable than almost every other rear-wheel drive Nissan. The available engine swap for this car is a blessing and a curse. The 599 horsepower max output may be one of the main reasons I find this car so enjoyable. Having a car that isn't completely overwhelmed by an excessive amount of horsepower is nice from a drivability perspective, but seeing as this is the best Silvia from a chassis dynamics perspective, I can't help but wonder what this car could do with a swap more in line with some of the other Silvias. Regardless, it's a great car for its PP, it's a great car for its power level, and it definitely lives up to its legendary status. A great car with or without its available engine swap. Independent of PP rating, the fastest Silvia in GT7 around most tracks is the S14 Silvia Type S. The LT5 Corvette engine swap provides a linear power delivery with 1121 horsepower and ludicrous straight line speed. The high speed cornering is also above average by Silvia standards, only beat out by the Sileighty. The one downside of this car is the fact that it's over 800 PP maxed out. Not a deal breaker for most people, but it will require more detuning to get down to your desired PP rating than some of the other Silvias. This setup will also work phenomenally well for the S14 Silvia K Aero model, as well as the unswapped version of this car. Though in the lower horsepower ranges, you'll have to move the final gear to the right in order to shorten the gear. When pushing hard, it's still very sketchy and difficult to apply the power with this thing, but one of the lone bright spots in a lineup of very unpredictable Silvia cars. Next up, we have my favorite generation of Silvia, but in game, unfortunately one of the most underwhelming ones, which is the Silvia Spec-R Aero S15. At its base, it's one of the better driving Silvias in GT7. However, due to no fault of its own, it receives the 2JZ Supra motor, which doesn't quite stack up to the engine swaps available for the other Silvia models. models. The torquey turbocharged 2JZ is not well suited to the Silvia's platform, as the wheel spin gets accentuated further by the influx of boost. For an 800 pp car, it's decent and it could run somewhere in the region of mid to high 143 at Trial Mountain. Though respectable, it's definitely tough to drive and maybe more well suited to a build without the swap. The suspension, differential, and downforce settings here work perfectly for the non-swap version. Overall, a solid car, but a little underwhelming considering this is the newest model of Silvia. Next up, we have the Nissan Qashqai. I'm sure this is an excellent consumer vehicle in real life and has its merits for existing as a road car, but in a game like GT7, it's just so hard for me to say something nice about the Qashqai. I covered it in my 1.61 update video, and it's really not all that useful for anything. The top speed is capped at 105 miles per hour no matter what you do to it, and while it feels okay to drive, it's not very good for its PP. It's not that impressive compared to other SUVs. It might work decently well as a starter car early in the game, but it won't take you any further than that. Another car I'm conflicted on is the 300ZX. One of my personal favorites from the older GT games, but just like those older GT games, the car seems to struggle in specific areas. The main issues in GT7, body control as well as traction coming out of low speed corners. The car turns decently well at high speed, mostly carried by the downforce and decent weight distribution, but in medium to low speed corners, the 300ZX feels very sloppy and loses a noticeable amount of time to its peers on entry, middle, and exit of those slower corners. To say it's not a viable car would be naive, however, as the decent high-speed cornering paired with the incredible top speed due to the low drag make this car a standout on tracks like Tokyo East Clockwise or Le Mans. And equipping the available engine swap from the R35 GTR gives it even more of a boost in the straight line speed department. Is it a top-tier pick for me in GT7? No, but it might be a car worth trying for the lower PP and horsepower races, as the low-speed traction will become less of a problem in those lower horsepower circumstances. I echo that sentiment with this next car as well, which is the Fairlady 240ZG. Honestly, it's undrivable. It's scary and it's not very good, and I don't really want to use it. Maybe on straight line speed-based tracks, the 240Z can find some success in the right hands, but the swap version of this car is a death trap, and I imagine it's a much better car without the swap. Though even so, the 240Z is lacking downforce compared to many of its peers. Overall, it's a solid lightweight option in the early game, but the more power you add to it, the more miserable it becomes to drive. Last, and not that far off least, we have the Nissan 180SX. The name of the game here is understeer and poor traction. Despite having a diffuser, the 180SX only has 100 front downforce. Thankfully, it's still endearing to drive despite not being the most useful, though the on-throttle traction is tricky, especially with the available R35 engine swap. Ensuring you do most of your acceleration in a straight line definitely helps, but can only take you so far. Thankfully, the 180SX is below 780 pp maxed out, and for a car at that pp level, it can post respectable times at straight line speed-based tracks. Once again, not a standout in any capacity, but a fun and challenging machine to test your throttle control and patience. Go pick one up if you're looking for a bit of chaos. And that's that, guys. Now we're going to get into the Nissan manufacturer rating. Now, the rating I've given to Nissan is an A+. Now, this might be confusing to some of you, as many of the Nissan options, especially in the non-GTR lineup, are really not all that strong. With that being said, what I find more important about this manufacturer and the general scope of the game is it has the highest car quantity of any manufacturer. And while everybody always likes to talk about quality over quantity, I feel like that trope is not always correct. If every manufacturer in this game was like Nissan and had a Nissan level lineup, the game would have so much more replay value and so much more to do just based on that potential car list alone. Not to mention the GTRs are some of the best road cars in the entire game, and many of the high downforce race cars, especially the Group 2 models, are also extremely good. If I were to name some weaknesses about the Nissan brand as a whole in GT7, the rear-wheel drive road car offerings are a little bit underwhelming just overall. A lot of them have a lot of power, but aside from the Silvia Q, which benefits from a PP exploit that makes it extremely fast, most of them really aren't going to be the best options at the PP level that they're racing at. And the other weakness, in my opinion, despite Nissan having 4 GR3 cars, 3 of those 4 GR3 cars are just straight up uncompetitive. So I can definitely understand why some of you think an A+ is a little bit over the top. I think the car quantity of the manufacturer, as well as a lot of the GTR road cars, carry this manufacturer up to the rating that it's at, and I do think it deserves to be here. Once again, if you guys do find use from these setups and or enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, as this greatly helps me out a lot. Also, less to do with this video, comment which cars or which manufacturers you would like to see next. I'm always checking the comments and I respond to every single one of them, so if you guys want anything in particular, I'm definitely going to prioritize the ones that I see the most. But without letting this video drag on too long, I hope you guys have a fantastic night. It's been your boy Dude, and I'm out. Peace.